Like, should the President of the United States really be commenting on a jury trial before it even gets started? The answer is a no. Kyle Rittenhouse probably shouldn't have been there. Know what I mean? Should he have gone home? Yeah, we could say he should have gone home, but that was not what was on trial. That was not what was on trial. And yet nobody's talking about the 3 felons that were on the street that were part of this altercation. Why were they on the streets? 3 convicted felons on the street, and we're going like, why was Kyle there? When, as far as we know, Kyle had an intention of wanting to help. Well, why would you go into that type of scenario unless you wanted to kill someone? Well, a jury of 12 didn't necessarily think so. I would think if I had an AR-15, people wouldn't mess around with me if I went into a hostile situation. And if Kyle didn't have a gun, guess what? One of those other 3 dudes did. So for protection, that makes sense. I bet you if Kyle had the opportunity to just not go out that night, if he could do it all over again, he just wouldn't. And when he broke down on the stand and he was crying and people were saying that was fake, let me tell you something. A man can tell when another man is like broken. And when Kyle was crying on that stand, I'm like, man, everything that just happened hit him. Now let's talk about the individuals that he shot. One pointed a gun at his head, a felon. He also shot that gentleman who was convicted of a weapons charge, and then a child molester. Now, I'm not saying that they deserve to be killed because they're felons, anything of that nature. I'm just saying they weren't out there that night to try and do good. I mean, that guy that had the gun, what was he doing with a gun? Why are we talking about what Kyle was doing with a gun when this guy had a gun? Just because someone brings a gun, and I use this analogy on my Facebook, just because you make bad decisions doesn't mean that you deserve to have bad things happen to you. And Kyle, on numerous occasions, could have put up his weapon. Lord knows if it was me, I would have had it like this all the time. Would have Rambo'd that shit. That would have been me. He didn't do that. He was assaulted previous to the point that he started firing, having skateboards banged over him. Another gentleman pulls out a gun. Did Kyle, in that moment, have justification to use deadly force, or did he have the right to act in self-defense? So it's just crazy to me that this kid that has a pretty squeaky clean record that apparently wanted to help, he's vilified, and yet we have these 3 felons on the street, and we're like, poor guys. And then racism gets pulled into this as well. How do we have an altercation with 4 Caucasian males and somehow it turns into a racist discussion? I didn't think for a second, well, what if he was black? He wasn't black. What if he was gay? What if he was 10 feet tall? Kyle gets off and all of a sudden we're talking about racism, and that makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. You know, Rage Against the Machine comes out and makes a statement like, who? Why? You condemn Kyle for his behavior. If you feel so strongly, then maybe you should put together a charity concert and donate all the proceeds to the pedo's family. Like, really? Again, I'll say, I don't think Kyle should have been there. He shouldn't have. But that's not what is on trial. I don't think those other 3 individuals should have been there. I don't think that they deserve to die. I don't think that Kyle should have been attacked. But I don't think he's guilty of murder. Now, I understand where people clash when it comes to this. It really comes down to, do you think he had intent to use that gun when he got there that night? I don't think so. Maybe you do. That's fine. There's nothing to show that he's a malicious individual. Just because someone carries a gun or just because someone has a knife on them doesn't mean that they necessarily have an intent to use it. Now, if he was a felon, like, I don't know, one of the other 3 people that he shot, then maybe so. A felon running around with a gun, or a felon running around with a knife, or a felon that has a previous weapons charge on them or a violent history, sure, I'd be more outraged that pedo was walking free, just doing his own thing. Lord knows what he could have been up to that night. I don't know. Like, he's the danger. Like, these other 3 individuals are known for being dangerous. and we just give them the green check mark. And then this 17-year-old kid that we can only just go based on what we know, and you don't have to believe it, but he went there to help out. Now, if Kyle just decided to go downtown and spray fire, sure. If Kyle would have turned around the second that he was touched and would have shot his gun, sure. This isn't what happened. Like, you think these three felons were trying to stop Kyle to save other people? If anything, they wanted to probably take his gun. They're not helpful individuals. These aren't pillars of society. People are acting like these three guys. Not saying that their lives aren't worth anything. They have families too, right? But I mean, where your empathy goes towards these felons that were up to no good that night, and then we have Kyle, a 17-year-old kid, and you want to lynch this kid? It just blows my mind. I understand that people will disagree. I can't understand that people are so through the roof with it, that people are so angry. And this narrative that's popping up to where I have people sometimes sending me messages saying that the things that I talk about are dangerous, right? Like talking about Kyle Rittenhouse and the fact that, he's not guilty, and that's dangerous. Why is that dangerous? Who decides what is the right thing to say, and then something that goes against the grain with that is the dangerous thing to say? I don't even know where that comes from. I'm not telling people to go riot on the streets, which is what was happening. That's dangerous. And that's what happens all the time, and nobody gives a shit. You can riot all you want. Riot all day. No problem. We're getting into this really dangerous period of time, and it's never been stronger than it is right now, and I've never felt it stronger than when I've started to cover topics like this. For instance, I've had a number of different guests on my show. I've had all these different perspectives, and just because I have a guest on my show doesn't mean that I have to adapt their way of thinking. And I can talk about a number of different issues. The new medicine is one big one, but this is just trickling into everything to where it's almost not safe to say anything unless it falls within that box that comes from mainstream media. Like, this is crazy. And the media did a real disservice when it came to this Rittenhouse trial. And it's really, really unfortunate. When Biden came out and said something, that was setting him up for failure, and that was unfair. The president of the United States, and then in a trial which you knew was going to be like in the eye of public opinion, you flagrantly say something like that? Like, this kid is going to make a lot of money. And why? Because news, once again, told little parts of the full story. There's a lot of people out there that don't even know that the three people that were shot were convicted felons. That's all suppressed. You don't hear about all these crummy things. Make it seem like it was a bunch of Girl Scouts that were out that night, and Kyle, like he's acting like the Terminator, looking to clean house. That's just not how it played out. But I think it's so easy for someone to be on the outside and judge what it would be like to be Kyle, to be assaulted. You have this weapon on you. And at what point would you have pulled the trigger? Now, maybe you wouldn't have been there. Again, that's not what the trial was about. He was there. He did have a gun. And when you were being assaulted and you're on the ground and there's no one there to help you, you are all by yourself, and someone pulls a gun on you, what are you going to do? How are you going to react? And I can't tell you how many times stuff like this has been on the news to where what they do is they have a police officer take a civilian or a news reporter, whatever it might be, and they reenact some scenes. For instance, they'll be bagging their groceries or things of that nature, putting them in a whole bunch of scenarios to where the reporter is the police officer and the police officer is the criminal. It's all simulated. And every freaking time, the reporter gets shot by the criminal because they waited too long. It's, sir, don't go to your vehicle. Sir, don't do this. Sir, don't do that. And now cops can't even do their jobs properly Cops are afraid to pull their weapons and shoot and do whatever because they know that they're going to come under scrutiny, especially when it comes to a black individual. And I can't even tell you, go online, like go on YouTube and watch how many videos that there are of white cops that have black people that shoot at them. And the reason being is because the white cop did not shoot. If they did, Lord knows. And now with all the shit that's happening in media right now and all the talk of racism, just like what's happening right now in the Rittenhouse trial, what it's doing, it's making it more difficult for cops to do their jobs because they're thinking about all this stuff in the background instead of doing what they have to do, which is just police. Is there some racism in this country? Absolutely. Is there racism in North America? Absolutely. Does it play a role every time there is something that's happening in media? No, unless media brings it in. That's what they do. And then we start talking about it, circulates. Then I'm doing a stupid video like this. Like, they bring it into the narrative. It's not there. It's not there. There's a gentleman today. I should be a little bit more prepared for this podcast. But a black gentleman that was raided. And he was there with his girlfriend. And when they came in to do the raid, there was a crossfire. The girlfriend got caught in the crossfire, shot 10 times, and he was found not guilty. It was self-defense because a SWAT team was going in there, et cetera, et cetera. I'll make sure that I put the name and the trial in the description, right? That's a black guy. No one wants to talk about that. But we'll talk about other situations and other narratives to where it fits their own. Media's job is to sell. Media's job is to get you to tune in. And what you should probably be doing is just tuning out because they don't care about whether he's guilty. They don't care whether he's innocent. They're going to spin it to sell newspapers and sell airtime no matter what. It doesn't matter. So there's no point fighting with your neighbor. There's no point fighting with your friends. There's definitely no point fighting with strangers. Because the way that this is all designed is that you're supposed to fight with somebody else no matter what. Don't let them win. Don't let media win. Because media is not going to be there to pick you up when you fall down. Your friends and family will. All right, I think that's it for me. Thanks for tuning in once again for another episode of the Launchpad Podcast Solo Edition, baby. Don't do too many of those. Please make sure to like, subscribe if you enjoy the content. This is a platform where I love to champion free speech. So if you jive with that, even more so, I'd love to have you come along for this ride with me. You take care, be well, and love simply because you can.